The Rose Garden storehouse was a place that housed various tools used to manage the garden. It was definitely not a pretty building. Because of its appearance, it had been built so that it was hidden in the corner of the Rose Garden. Kanon, Genji, Eva, and Hideyoshi came cutting across the Rose Garden holding umbrellas. They entered a small path just off the Rose Garden, which was normally off limits for those appreciating the garden and only used by those maintaining it. As they dashed down that, the storehouse came into view in front of them. Uh-oh, it's getting creepy again. I love it. It was quite an old shed, and compared to the flawlessly perfect beauty of the Rose Garden, it was pretty seedy looking. It was easy to understand why it had been built in a hard-to-see place. Eva and Hideyoshi arrived at the storehouse long after Kanon and Genji.
You too sure fast. I thought my heart was gonna explode.
I never knew they had a storehouse way over here. But what is that? When Eva looked where Kanon was pointing, she was at a loss for words. Noticing this, Hideyoshi also followed Kanon's finger and was likewise too shocked to speak. The entrance to the storehouse was a kind of shutter, and there, everyone suddenly realized why Kanon had been unable to find words to describe what they now saw. On the shutter, which was completely filthy from being exposed to wind and rain for so long, stuck right on it, there was something that looked like a strange dark red liquid. Oh god, what is this? Mucus? Or maybe it was some sticky paint? An indescribably eerie shape was drawn on the shutter with some kind of ghastly substance. Okay, I'm surprised now. I was just expecting some more bloody handprints or something, but this is definitely creepy. The rain had caused it to drip down like fresh blood, leaking from an open wound. No more beating around the bush. Some kind of mark was drawn there, with a ghastly substance that looked like blood, in a shape that seemed to suggest something ominous. 2 circles were drawn there, and inside them was a design that looked like a cross. The 4 ends of the cross were widely exaggerated, and it looked like some kind of crest from somewhere around Europe. And in the cracks between these shapes, written closely packed together, were some unfamiliar characters or possibly symbols.
What a vulgar bit of graffiti. Could this be one of those magic circles used in demonic ceremonies?
It wasn't surprising that Hideyoshi would say that about such a ghastly shape drawn with a deep red dripping substance. Jo, da mal gute Nacht, schönen Abend noch. Und vielleicht ja bis nächstes Mal. When was this made? There was nothing drawn here when I came by yesterday, before it started raining.
We must do something before anyone else sees this. If they laid eyes upon it, it would cause them great discomfort.
That's right. Even though it's just a shed, I wouldn't want to leave such an unpleasant piece of graffiti alone for even a second longer than I had to. Oh, Aaron, what do you mean by that?
There's some paint inside the storehouse. Let us paint over it temporarily as an emergency measure, then repaint it again someday when the weather is good.
Yeah, I'm kind of already expecting that to not work. Genji remembered that he had just recently seen another scribble and that it too had been made with a strange dark red substance of the same color as this. That must have been, that's right, he had seen it on the door to Natsuhi's room. Come on, Kun. Let's remove this scribble quickly and go back, okay? Even though it's just a storehouse, it's really irritating to have graffiti around the home I was brought up in. Yes, ma'am. I will take care of it immediately. Kanon squatted in front of the shutter and unlocked it. Okay. He then lifted it up with all of his strength. A boisterous noise resounded, and the eerie shape drawn on the shutter began to get sucked in through the top as the shutter was raised. At least for the time being, that ominous drawing disappeared from their direct gaze, and they all breathed a sigh of relief. But for how long, I wonder? Thanks to a kids program they came across, Maria was feeling much better. Butler and Jessica were poking fun at the kids show at every turn, cackling together. George was enjoying the program with Maria from her perspective. Nanjo sat on a sofa by himself, passing the time by reading quietly. They heard hurried footsteps coming from the hallway. They were the footsteps of a single person. Did that mean it wasn't the group of 4 that had just left? It was Genji. It was very rare for Genji, who considered being out of breath a violation of her servant's virtues, to be gasping for air. He had probably come dashing back from outside the mansion. His shoulders were soaking wet, and he didn't have his usual trim appearance. When Genji noticed Nanjo looking at him, he gave a small silent bow and quickly approached him.
Dr. Nanjo, my apologies. Please come with me quickly. What is the matter?
As Genji whispered something into Nanjo's ear, Nanjo went pale. He arose from the sofa, trying not to be noticed by the children who were still engrossed by the TV, and the 2 of them rapidly left the parlor, muffling their footsteps. Just as they were about to exit the parlor, they came across Natsuhi, who was pushing a serving cart loaded with a tea set. Genji whispered something into Natsuhi's ear, and Natsuhi went pale too in apparent shock. What the hell? Then, leaving the serving cart where it was, the 3 of them dashed towards the entrance. George noticed them running down the rose garden through the window. What is that? Isn't that Genji-san and Dr. Nanjo and that's Aunt Natsuhi, isn't it? What's up, Aniki? Maybe something happened. They looked terribly flustered. When Jessica and Maria saw that Eva, Hideyoshi and Nanjo were no longer in their seats and that the serving cart had been abandoned in the entrance to the parlor, they also realized that something was the matter. Could there have been some kind of accident? Let's go check it out. It's no fun if we're the only ones left out, right? Hee hee. For some reason what Battler said sounded extremely indiscreet, but they couldn't deny that they were a little insecure and concerned after seeing the adults run off into the rain without regards to their appearance. Let's check it out, okay? I'm worried something might have happened. Jessica's uneasy words spoke for all of them. Hey Maria, are you coming too? Or will you watch TV?
Wanna watch TV?
Yeah, okay, so we're probably gonna see some gore now. I could imagine that. And they... No, I don't know, but... the fact that she's not coming would be an ideal moment to show something traumatizing to the rest of them. Let's go on without her. Maria-chan will be back soon. You keep watching TV, okay? By the time the kids made it outside, the adults were no longer in sight, but Jessica seemed to have a pretty good idea where they'd gone, judging by the direction they'd been running. Following Jessica, we ran through the rain-soaked rose garden. The wind seemed to suddenly get stronger. The malicious sound of thunder began to rumble like it had the previous night. It felt like an eerie something had surrounded the island and was trying to stop us from moving forward. Jessica, is there something over this way? I'm pretty sure there's a shed for gardening tools or something. What in the world could be going on in a place like that? Just as Jessica had said, they began to see a storehouse in front of them. They could also see the adults there. The shutter to the storehouse was open and several adults looked as though they were searching for something. For some reason, only Natsuhi was outside the storehouse. Without even holding an umbrella, she looked like she was hanging her head and her back was facing them. It was Genji, Nanjo, and Natsuhi who had just left the mansion. The ones who left earlier, Kanon, Eva, and Hideyoshi, were also there, making for a small crowd of people, but there was absolutely no bustle of activity. When Natsuhi realized that the children were approaching, a terrible expression rose to her face, and she ran at them with her arms spread wide. Uh-oh.
You mustn't come any closer. Go back to the mansion.
But despite that, no, because of that, the kids saw the scene Natsuhi was trying to keep them away from. Okay, don't see anything too bad yet. Inside the storehouse, with its shutter wide open, a faint fluorescent light shone down, and right there was... What? Uh-oh. Jessica's piercing shriek rang out. But that was just because Jessica's scream was the loudest. The same thing spilled out of Battler and George's mouth as well. Eva spread her arms just like Natsuhi, roaring at the kids with a bone-chilling expression on her face. George, take everyone and return to the mansion. Quickly. Right now. When Natsuhi spread her arms, I thought she was trying to prevent us from advancing any further, but that wasn't why Eva was spreading her arms right now. She was trying to stop us kids from seeing that terrible scene. It was her mother's heart trying to protect the eyes and hearts of his children by blocking our view of that terrible scene by at least the width of one of her arms. Is this some kind of joke? Is it... Oh shit. Oh god. I'd seen this kind of cheap scene all too often. In manga, TV, anime, and movies. I'd seen it over and over again. Listen to the music, man. This was just seeing something appear in real life that I'd seen plenty of times before in some of those more sensational movies, right? That alone shouldn't... Oh, but that suit. It's that old bastard's, isn't it? Oh no, he was right. I get it, then that's Uncle Klaus. And Curio... It's all... Holy shit, it's all of them. Kiryu-san and Aunt Rosa. Dad. You mustn't, Jessica. You mustn't go in. You mustn't look. Dad.
Rigor mortis has set in across almost the entire body. Most likely, 6 hours or more have passed since death.
Man, the music, man.
As far as I can tell by looking at the damaged area, there's a high probability that they were damaged after their death. No, I must watch what I say. I'm a general practitioner. Examining corpses is outside my area of expertise. So what's going on here? Just killing them wasn't enough, so they went on to do something like this? The devil, this here's the work of the devil.
Aunt Natsuhi caught Jessica in her arms and Aunt Eva caught George Aniki. So I was the only one who could approach the entrance to the storehouse. If only there had been someone there to catch me too. I wouldn't have needed to have this horrible evil scene burn into my eyes. No, that's not it. It isn't that there's no one here to catch me. The people who should catch me, they're right there, aren't they? Just as Jessica said, it did look like a storehouse for gardening tools. A lawnmower with extra blades, a grass sickle and a hammer, some carpentry tools such as a saw, piled up potted plants and bags of fertilizer, and treated just the same, the corpses of several people had been laid to rest there. No, had been tossed in there. I could tell them by their clothes. That old bastard and Kiryu-san. No, Kiryu's dead too. Uncle Klaus and Aunt Rosa. No, not Rosa. Beyond that, Goda-san, yes. And are there still more of them? How many people oh no, please, not Shannon. Fucking kidding me. It's more than I can count on one hand. Damn it. Didn't know whether it had been one of those gardening tools, which if used for something other than their intended purpose could definitely be wielded with a naked brutality, or whether some horrible tool had been brought in here specifically for this. Anyway, each one of the bodies jammed in here had been given an atrocious makeup. It wasn't makeup, it was more like the faces had been plowed. The faces were smashed, forced into expressions that normal people couldn't make even after death. I couldn't tell where the eyes or the noses were, but I couldn't find their mouth because they were gaping wide, their gums exposed. But their front teeth were missing, and even the cheeks that should have covered all this were all torn up and laid bare. Holy shit. That trendy makeup you always spend so much time on, even though your man is doing a thing now. Dad. I always thought you were going to hell, but still not like this, right? You weren't such a son of a bitch that you should have to suffer so brutally. And Kiryu-san, didn't I tell you to stop going out with this guy? There's absolutely no reason for you to end up like this too. They've got no faces. No faces. Damn it. Bittler-san, you mustn't look anymore. There's no way your mother and father would want you to see them like this. For their sakes, you mustn't look anymore. Dad, people are supposed to have faces that look like they're sleeping peacefully, right? They've got no faces. My dad and Kiryu-san have no faces. I don't even know what kind of faces they were wearing when they died. What's wrong with me? Will I have to see these smashed monster-like faces every time I remember them? It's just great. I didn't want to remember that old bastard smut face anyway. Just great. But why even Kiryu-san's face? Kiryu-san wasn't a crook. Sure, she ticked me off a bit now and then, but she was like a cool big sister to me. This is wrong. This is all wrong. At least Uncle Klaus has it better, doesn't he? It's not his whole face, just the side. At least he's got half his face left, right? It's still better. It's still better. Jessica filled her ears with the sound of her own screaming, trying to shut out my reckless words. Stop it, bad luck, huh? Just stop it, just stop it. Aniki, Aniki. Disregarding age and appearance, I fell to my knees, clinging to Aniki's waist and sobbing. It was as if I was crying on behalf of everyone there. Representing the feelings of everyone there, I screamed over and over. Well, I guess a holy shit would be appropriate right now. Ooh, Father. The ones lying over there are Uncle Klaus, Uncle Rudolph, Aunt Curia, and Aunt Rosa and Goda-san. Just those 5, right? No, there are 6 people. There's one more person over here. Nick Shannon. The body Hideyoshi was looking down on now happened to be hidden among the shadows in that mountain range of objects, in a blind spot to George, who stood by the entrance. So George couldn't tell whose body it was. So George cursed himself. He cursed the fact that his worst guesses always turn out to be right. So the one lying at your feet is Shannon, isn't it? Yes, it's Shannon. No. Well, now I'm sad. I mean... So, like, I mean, it's definitely messed up anyway. Can't say... Holy shit. Holy shit. I can't say I feel too bad for Klaus, because he wasn't exactly the most sympathetic guy. But it's still shocking and fucked up either way. This dude... Kinda liked him, so not cool. She was very nice so far, so not cool either. Good lord. Yeah, I liked her too. This guy can go fuck himself, but come on, not her. They just had this nice scene between her and George, and oh man, fuck you. George fell completely silent. He shook slightly, his lower lip trembling. Can we at least see if she was wearing the ring? Although that would be even sadder. Normally he would have wanted to run to his beloved's body, screaming and crying. However, before rashly rushing forward, he worked to keep his composure and asked his father. Is Shannon the same as Uncle Klaus and the others? Wait, let me look at that again. Was there a pattern to that? So his right eye, her right eye, his entire face. Wasn't there something about the eye? Wait, offer the 6 chosen by the key as sacrifices. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, there we go. So, yeah, I guess it's starting. The whole thing is starting to happen. Well, so much for my guess that the second Twilight would be George and Shannon. Since Shannon is already fucking dead. Great. Oh my god. Hideyoshi deeply understood the meaning of those words, so he couldn't give George an immediate answer. But not saying anything is pretty much the same as saying yes. Or rather, he felt that silence was the only sincere and loving response he could give George right now. When George asked if Shannon was the same, he meant to ask whether her corpse was in the same condition as the others or not. Don't think that needed explaining. Since Hideyoshi hadn't denied it, it meant her corpse was in the same brutal state. Oh, there's something in the profiles now. Thanks for that. Oops. His corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. The direct cause of death is unknown, but it seems the side of his head was smashed after his death. This is the beginning of everything. His corpse was found inside the Rose Garden storehouse. His face seems to have this. He has a right to lament his ill fortune. Okay, that's always the same. She was chosen by the demon's roulette. That's all there is to it. I'll get to see her again so I don't feel lonely. What the hell? I'm confused, but I'm guessing I am supposed to be confused. Her corpse was found down. Don't worry, everyone will be revived in the Golden Land. Will they? How unfortunate. Apparently he was originally supposed to be on duty in the guest house. Yeah, not really unfortunate for him. I mean, or for me. Can I look at Shannon? Thanks for the tip, by the way. I didn't even notice that the text had changed. No, you can't. Why not? After all, I won't be able to see Shannon's face again, right? Yeah, but dude, that's not the way you want to remember her. Come on, I wouldn't want to look at the face if it was me. I would prefer not to burn such an image of the beloved of my life into my brain forever. So why won't you let me see what her face looked like at the end? Last time you met Shannon-chan was yesterday, right? Yes. I see. When you left her, what kind of face was she showing you? Yeah, that's the face you should remember her with. It was a wonderful smile. After he handed her the ring, she hesitated even though she must have already made up her mind. Then she looked bashful and ran away because she was embarrassed to let him see her face looking like that. That's the expression that was revived in George's mind. I see. Then I'm sure Shannon-chan would want to leave you with that smile in your memory. Hideyoshi looked down upon Shannon's body lying at his feet. Just like the other bodies, it was in such a horrible state that it would make anyone want to cover their eyes. Her head had been smashed in from the side and no more than half of her expression remained. If the remaining blood-soaked half of her expression had been wiped clean, would that graceful smile of hers have peeked out? But only half of it. Without thinking, Hideyoshi slapped his hands over his eyes. How brutal. If her face was going to be crushed anyway, then if only all of it had been crushed, he might have been able to temporarily distract George from his pain by making the pathetic suggestion that it was someone else wearing Shannon's clothes. But half of her face had been left untouched. It caused the body so much humiliation, while still proving beyond doubt that the body was Shannon's and no one else's. How inhuman, how brutish. And there, trying his best to burn the image of the remaining half of Shannon's expression into his eyes as she lay at Hideyoshi's feet, was Kanon. Kanon was not crying. Tears had risen to his eyes, but they did not drip down. But that didn't mean he wasn't feeling as much sadness as everyone else. Losing Shannon, who had lived with him in the same orphanage, whom he had loved as a sister, must have been just the same as losing a blood relative. George, I'm sure Shannon-chan is saying thank you. She must be glad you didn't end up seeing her in such a pitiful state. I'm sure. She's thanking you for holding strong and showing restraint. I understand. I understand, Father, I understand. George leaned against the outside wall of the storehouse, crouching down limply. Father, I have a request. What is it? I want you to look for me. Is there a ring on Shannon's finger? I'll say that he does bring it up. A ring? Let me see. Hideyoshi crouched down. As he did, Kanon silently pointed to one of Shannon's hands. Yeah, there it is. It's a diamond ring, with a valuable diamond. Must have been pretty expensive. And which hand and which finger is it on? The ring finger of the left hand. I see. So Shannon-chan was engaged. George, don't tell me you... Eva, that doesn't matter now. A man made a lifelong promise to Shannon-chan. A man promised her happiness for life. Who that man was isn't the issue here. Being told that by a man is a woman's dream, isn't it? I know when she received this ring. I also don't know who gave it to her. However, even so, Shannon-chan took this ring. Then she accepted it and put it on her left ring finger. I'm sure the man who gave it to her was also happy. To most of the people there, Hideyoshi was simply disturbed by this extraordinary situation and was blurting out nonsense. However, someone who knew of George and Shannon's true relationship would understand the full meaning of those words. I see. Thank you, Father. George stood up. The traces of tears still streaked his face, but his expression had returned to its usual calm one. Let's go, Battler-kun, Jessica-chan. If we stay here any longer, we'll get in the way of the adults. You're right. Jessica sniffled once, showing her face to her mother, who had been holding her the whole time, to let her know she was okay now. When she faced George again, she once again had on her usual expression. You know, I'm wondering if the charm that Jessica gave her mother actually protected her from being one of the victims, and so somebody else ended up being the victim instead. Like, maybe Goda wasn't supposed to be killed, but because she had the charm, she didn't end up being it. I don't know, just an idea. Although she still couldn't smile. I mean, because she had this bloody hand on her doorknob, like somebody tried to enter the door, and maybe the charm protected her. I mean, why else would it even get brought up like that and happen at all? Battler, hang in there. Battler kept on crouching in front of his parents' bodies. I'm sorry. Crying like hell calmed me down. You bastard, Dad, I bet you're laughing at me. After all that shit I talked about you, here I am crying like a baby just cause you died. Well, so what? I guess I just got the gene that makes you cry when your parents kick the bucket. I don't think that's a gene thing, I think that's normal. Battler's face was still bright red from the tears, but he had at least recovered enough to fake a smile, if only a bitter one. Kano, you mustn't remain here any longer either. Take the children and return to the mansion. Natsuhi had been standing under the rain this whole time, unable to take a step into the storehouse. Maybe she had her own way of grieving, different from Battler's. Realizing that she had to take on a role of responsibility now that her husband was dead, she gave Kanon those orders. I mean, I could imagine that she is not as sad as she would have been a few days ago, because just a day ago he showed her that he doesn't really trust her that much. Yes, madam. Kanon rose silently and turned to face me. His face was pure white, almost as though his own heart had died along with Shannon, and there was no life in his expression. On an ordinary day, if he had been told to guide the children through the beautiful rose garden, Kanon might have led the way. But now there was no distinction between Kanon and the children. They were now just kids of about the same age, suffering the pain of losing those close to them. After making sure that the children were leaving, Natsui started giving orders to Genji. Genji, contact the police immediately. Well, how? The phone is dead. They probably won't be able to come until the typhoon passes, but they should be able to tell us what to do next. Or maybe the phone inside the house is just dead, but they still have a phone for calling people outside. Who knows? We'll see.
Understood. There is an emergency radio.
Ah, okay, I see.
So I will use that to contact them.
When she heard that, Natsuhi remembered. That's right, the phones were out today. Yeah, see, I didn't forget. Weren't they? However, they also had a radio, since they couldn't necessarily rely on phones all the time while living on an isolated island. At any rate, they should start by contacting the police and receiving their instructions. Everything else could wait.
Dr. Nanjo, is there anything more you can do here? Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do. Understood. Genji, could you at least cover their faces with something? Exposing them like this is humiliating to them as well. Yes, ma'am.
Genji picked up several dried-up towels from inside the storehouse, when Eva stopped him with a shrill voice.
Wait a second. Stop. This is the scene of the crime, isn't it? Then we mustn't disturb it. We all panicked and walked in here with our shoes on, but even that will surely get in the way of the police's investigation, right?
I guess she has a point. Natsuhi glared at Eva, offended. Objectively speaking, Eva was right. Even so, she glared at Eva, as though accusing her of refusing to do those tragic corpses which had been humiliated even after death, the simple kindness of covering their faces. However, Eva had spoken both calmly and correctly. This horrible situation definitely wasn't an accident. It was a crime. Someone had killed them. It was a murder case, so they needed to be careful to avoid disturbing the site any further. They had to do what little they could to aid the police, preserving clues that might help catch the detestable culprit.
I agree with Eva-san. Until the police come, we should leave everything be. What do you say, madam?
You're right. Very well. Close it up. And just in case, we should put a different lock on it.
Different lock?
Yes. When we came here, the shutter was locked. That means the culprit used the key to the shutter to lock it.
Ah, true.
That makes sense. So does that mean the key that opens this shutter will have the culprit's fingerprints on it?
I'm sure it will be worth submitting it to police as evidence. But Kanon-kun usually has it, and he used it to unlock the shed just now. It'll probably have Kanon's fingerprints on it. Also, that key was handed to Genji-san just now, and he took it with his bare hands. It doesn't look like it'll be very useful as evidence.
That was careless of me. My apologies. Genji-san, are there any other keys to this storehouse?
No, only this one.
So the culprit walked out of the servant room with that key, and then was nice enough to return the key to where they found it.
Hideyoshi's theory sounded plausible, but was actually very strange if you thought about it. Why would they go to all the trouble of returning a key they stole? No, if you think about it even more deeply, there are some points that are even more bizarre. When a criminal hides a body, they're usually trying to delay the point at which it'll be found, so they can use that time to escape. The six weren't necessarily killed here, but it was reasonable to assume that they were killed somewhere on this island, carried to the storehouse and hidden to delay the discovery of the crime. And yet, the eerie magic circle scribbled on the storehouse shutter had eloquently indicated the location of the hidden corpses. Sure, it didn't explicitly mention the corpses, but 6 people had gone missing. In that situation, someone had made such an obvious piece of graffiti and even returned the key to the shutter, almost as though they wanted the corpses here to be discovered.
Anyway, we can't put all our faith in a lock that the culprit has opened once before. If we want to protect this place from the culprit's hand, I think we should put a new lock on it.
I think that is a good plan. I agree.
Genji fished around inside the storehouse and unsealed a brand new padlock that had been inside a small box.
What should I do with the key?
I will take it. I will take responsibility and hand it over to the police.
Natsuhi took the key to the padlock from Genji's hand. After that, they all exited and lowered the shutter, and so the corpses were once again sealed behind that shutter, which was still covered with that creepy magic circle. Genji crouched down in front of the shutter to fasten the new padlock. Shutters often have a place in front where you can attach your own lock in addition to the main lock of the shutter. This was one of those types. In the midst of the roar of thunder and the pouring rain, the storehouse stood there ominously. With its closed shutter still covered in a blood-like creepy substance, it swallowed up the bodies of the 6. To Natsuhi, putting the new lock on was mainly to preserve the scene for the police. She might have felt like she wanted to shut that mouth for all eternity, to prevent that eerie beast from swallowing up any more victims.
Come on, let's go, everyone. Dr. Nanjo, thank you very much for your work. Genji, hurry and contact the police.
I will do as soon as I return.
The adults left the storehouse. The ghastly magic circle drawn on the shutter kept the 6 bodies in its throat, looming eerily as the lightning occasionally lit it up. Oh boy. Okay, I think this is a good place to stop again. So, let us do just that. And I will stop the recording now and see everybody on YouTube next time.